Hello everybody, and thank you very much for joining us. We're really excited, Lee and I, to be able to bring you this webinar. So I'm Esther Pepperdine. I'm a psychologist working for Tees, Esk and Wear Valley's NHS, and I guess very motivated to do this because I've got a real interest in compassion focused therapy, and I guess we're both Lee and Lee will introduce himself in a second. I guess we're not claiming to be experts, but we feel that we're very much we didn't invent the therapy. The therapy was invented by Paul Gilbert, and a lot of the things that we're going to say here are sort of Paul Gilbert's words, really. But we're kind of hopefully a conveyor of the message of compassion focused therapy and why compassion can be helpful for us. Do you want to introduce yourself, Lee?
Hello, my name's Lee Partis. I'm a senior counsellor. I work for Tees, Esk and Wear Valleys as well. And I'm as a therapist, I use various modalities, but in the last few years, having come across compassion focused therapy, I work mainly in prisons, where I work completely in prisons, really. I find it really, really effective working with that client group. So we're hoping that this is a 5-week course, and it will build up to allow you to experience compassion focused, compassionate mind training. I think probably the first session there'll be more talking, and as we go through the 5 weeks, there'll be less and less of us talking and more of us doing. I think that's the plan, Esther. Yeah, that's what we're hoping for.
So what we wanted to find out is, it's very difficult. We hoped that we'd, compassion is often about kind of connection between people, really. And we hoped that we'd be able to have a sense of connection in this seminar. What are you hoping to get out of this? So if you could just type it in the chat, if there's something specific that you're hoping to get out of these 5 sessions. To build your own self-compassion. Yeah, that sounds like a good goal. Okay, and I wonder, whilst we're waiting for people to do that, whether we just give you an overview of what we're hoping that you might get out of this. I guess to give you a bit of an introduction to compassion, talk about what compassion is, to look at how compassion might be useful in our lives, and to help people start to develop a little bit of a sense of compassion and build on the skills that you already have. So we might be using quite a lot of imagery exercises and things as we go along. Would you add anything to that, Lee?
No, I'm sort of looking at a lot of the chat here. A lot of people saying that they want to learn about self-compassion, but also learn exercises to help with clients, with both with yourselves and with people you're working through, which I think is exactly what we're aiming to do. So, as we said before, the aim is to give you some sort of psychoeducation, some of the ideas behind compassion-focused therapy, and then lots of experiential learning, lots of stuff that you can do both for yourself and with your clients. It's a voyage of discovery for us and you.
Yes. So a lot of people talking about self-compassion, but also ways to help others develop it. So hopefully that could really, and how to retain compassion whilst working with patients. I think that's particularly, important. It can be such a challenge, can't it, to us just working with other human beings, and all of the things that can bring within us, some of the challenges of that, and compassion can kind of really help with that. So,
and I think we're going to start with the idea of, we'll give you an overview, and we're going to look at, we begin with self-compassion, but we then develop that to move on to how we feel compassion for others.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, and I guess just to say to people that we've got these 5 sessions, but it's not loads, there'll be plenty kind of missing from it, and but if people are interested in this work, then we'd definitely recommend trying to link in with the Compassionate Mind organisation, that you can just Google and find. They have lots of resources, but also books like The Compassionate Mind, written by Paul Gilbert. There's the Compassionate Mind workbook, which I don't know if people can see here. Oh yes, you've got it too, Lee. That's really helpful
back to front.
as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to share my slides with you. We haven't got many slides, but just to help with this first bit. But well, I guess before I do that, just having a think about why we need compassion, really. And I guess we need compassion because life is pretty hard. We're all pretty much struggling to, you know, to get through. We are born, we don't really choose to be born. We have goodness knows how many days on the earth, some shorter than others. We suffer from diseases, we have issues in relationships, we're all struggling to get by, and then we die. And the only things really we can be sure of is kind of change and probably death at the end of it. So it's all pretty tricky, and life is hard, and sometimes kind of accepting that's difficult, but compassion can be a real sort of antidote to that. And I guess thinking about human beings, because a big part of compassion is about knowing that we're all in it together and seeing ourselves as human beings and knowing some of the challenges that brings. But I guess as human beings, we are capable of a massive amount of cruelty. So it wasn't that long ago that we were having gladiatorial games, pitching people against animals and watching them get torn to bits. We had public hangings, this sense of wanting to punish people and watching, and that was actually a way you might spend your weekend. But more recently, you know, when we look at the inequalities in the world, the wars that we have, and how in a way we can kind of dissociate from that suffering, because we kind of have to in order to move on. But we are, I think it's a key message is to kind of not be thinking that that's just what other people do. You know, we've all got that within us, we're all human beings, but we've also got a great potential for compassion. So I'm going to talk a bit about what compassion is, but I guess it's really related to our caring mentality. I guess inside of us we've got these lots of different kind of selves or different mentalities. So at different times we might have a kind of competitive mentality, and at another time we might have a caring mentality. But because of the way that we've evolved, and I guess the things that make us different from turtles, if you think about turtles, they lay hundreds of eggs and then they just scurry off and leave them to hatch, and a few of them might make it to the sea when the babies come out. Whereas for us, we might have, you know, one baby, essentially two at the same time, that require loads of nurturing. And so we've got that evolved instinct to actually care, and compassion is building upon that. So I'm going to share my slides with you if I can. Okay, hopefully you can see that. So what is compassion? So it's about a sensitivity to suffering in yourself and others, with a willingness to try to alleviate and prevent it. So it sounds so simple, but there's actually kind of two parts to it. It's about being able to be sensitive and actually to kind of face up to the things that might be happening for us and for others. But also, I guess we're not going to just sort of hang out of a burning building and have somebody there saying, oh, this must be really difficult for you, I notice you're suffering. We actually need people to take the steps to actually try to alleviate and prevent it, and that might involve quite a lot of bravery, coming in and getting us out of the burning building or taking the steps to do something about it. So it's about a certain amount of commitment to actually do something, and bravery and kind of wisdom within that. So, and I guess coming back to to what was said about these different mentalities that we have and this capacity for cruelty, the main thing that the main concern, I suppose, is that if we don't have that mindful awareness of our different desires and different mentalities, then a mind that doesn't know itself can be really dangerous. So one of the steps to compassion is about just increasing that mindfulness of our own minds and our own desires, but also fostering this element of compassion. So, and the reason that compassion, apart from it being kind of an innate thing that we do, the reason that it can be so helpful to us is it's been linked to numerous things for years, and historically, and kind of various traditions. It's been linked to kind of happiness, and being able to stimulate compassion can make people more happy, but also to various indicators of well-being, kind of heart disease, our immune systems. People that can have compassion for themselves and others tend to be able to kind of be healthier and function better. So it's something that can bring us a lot of benefits, and it is also importantly something that we can train. Research is saying now that we can train ourselves to be compassionate. So, which is what we're hoping that we're going to be able to do here, is to teach you some exercises that might be able to do that. So, would you add anything to that, Lee?
Well, just yeah, no, just that we could. So, what this is about, it's about learning how to focus on things that can be helpful to us, because our brain often moves us to a place where we're focusing on things that aren't helpful to us. So what the mind training is about learning how we can begin to focus on things that can help us, and we can generate compassion too. We can find ways of developing, focusing, and generating it in ourselves, and hopefully other people, hopefully you.
Okay, thanks. So, do you want me to share my screen again for the next bit, or not? Do you want to just let me know?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Share your screen, and we'll move on to the next part. We've spoken about how we just find ourselves here. We're all part of the flow of life. We're shaped by our genes and the social circumstances we find ourselves in. Paul Gilbert often talks about the idea, imagine that aged 1, you've been kidnapped by a Mexican drug gang, taken off to Mexico presumably, and brought up by them. Who would you be today? Would you be you? Would you be sat here listening to us talking? Well, probably not. We don't know who you would be. I don't know who I would be, but I certainly wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be the same person. I would be different. So we're shaped by those things, and a lot of those things are not our fault. We can't help that. It's the flow of life that we find ourselves in. So if it's not our fault in that way, do you want to move on to the next bit about two brains, Esther? It can be helpful to think about us having, it's almost as if we have two brains. As if we have an old brain and a new brain. And what that leads to is what we have to exist with, which is our tricky brain. And I think a way of describing this is to think of if you move on to the next slide, Esther. Chimpanzees, as far as we know, pretty sure that they don't go around thinking about this sort of stuff. Their capacity to think about the future and ruminate is not as developed as ours is. There's a story of a lion and a zebra. So the zebra is, if you move on to the next slide, Esther, yeah. The zebra's having its lunch on the Serengeti, eating away, and it wanders away from the rest of the herd, and it looks up. It gets the whiff of a lion, and immediately its brain kicks into action, and starts producing all sorts of chemicals, including cortisol. Heart rate goes up. It gets ready to fight or to run away. Zebras don't usually fight lions, so it's ready to run. There's the lion, it sees the lion, off it goes, it runs away. Now its muscles and its heart rate's pumping blood. It's more able to run away more quickly. It's manages to avoid the lion who chases it, gets away, finds its herd over there in the distance, makes it back to the herd, and immediately its anxieties come down. Now, if that were you or I, certainly me, I'd probably be up a tree, shaking, trembling, probably being sick, thinking about what it would have been like for this lion to have caught me, to have ripped me apart, to have done all these horrible things, the pain. Perhaps I'd start to think about, oh God, I've got to go back there tomorrow. What if there's two lions there? The night before I would have to go back to that place. Perhaps I would have some terrible nightmares, couldn't sleep, would wake up sweating, thinking about this lion that might be. So we have the capacity to think about the future, to imagine amazing things. You know, we can get to the moon, we can write symphonies, but we can also get stuck in really unhelpful loops because of this old brain, the fight-flight mode, the threat system, which we'll get onto a bit more next week. When you join that with the new brain and our capacity to think and imagine and to be creative, we get stuck in some very negative loops. Anything you want to add, Esther, to that?
No, I think that's the thing, isn't it? I know that having spoken to neuropsychologists, the true kind of scientists would say that this is a very, very simplified model, with lots of challenges now, but it can be really helpful, and it makes intuitive sense, doesn't it? That we've got this part of us, this brain that kind of goes into the fight or flight response, or it's very orientated towards kind of basic life needs like getting food, sex, reproduction, social status, and then we've got this kind of overlaid with a new brain capacity to ruminate, to worry, to kind of reflect and know ourselves. And that can be a really difficult combination. It can be a wonderful combination as well if we harness it in the right way, because it means that we can use these new brain capacities to plan ahead and think things through and change our situations, but also we get stuck in these really anxious loops.
So a good example of that is today for me. I found myself getting really nervous, thinking, oh my God, how many people are going to be there? We've got to talk to a screen. I've got to remember all this stuff, and I've got to get it across in the right way. And I want people to understand. Oh my God, what if I can't? If I run out of words, or I can feel my mouth getting dry. So my body, my brain, I can't control that. I find it very difficult to control that. If I'm not paying attention, I can panic. I can lose my words. Yeah. So our body takes over.
Yeah. And sometimes there might be another layer of that for a lot of people. We then have the added element of, oh my goodness, I'm such an anxious person. I shouldn't be feeling like this. I should be able to just be confident and not be bothered about it. So we get into another loop as well, where our new brain's going there. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we can begin to become our own self-critic, and we can start criticizing ourselves and get into all sorts of problems in that way. What missed? Anything else here?
Well, I guess just thinking, how does this all relate to compassion? Because in some ways the ideas seem a little bit separate, but it's because a lot of this education about our brains and evolution and thinking it's the sort of reality check that we need to start with compassion, and it's about having that wisdom to know that this isn't our fault. We're struggling with these tricky brains that we didn't choose, we didn't design, and it's what makes us human, and we're all just trying our best, but it absolutely isn't our fault. And that can be a really powerful message. it's not to say that it's not our responsibility to do things about it. You know, when I said that humans are capable of real cruelty, it's still our responsibility to take control of our brains and stop that happening. But it's not always our fault when we might have these murderous impulses at times. I think,
and for me, that's exactly the point. That's exactly the point that you're saying about responsibility. It's not our fault. We didn't ask to be born into the family we're born and have the experiences that we had. What is our responsibility, though, is knowing all this, what do we then do about it? How can we bring compassion to bear, firstly, perhaps on ourselves, and then on other people and the world, in order to make that the best it can be, to make us the best version of ourselves we can be, and to help other people do the same. And then perhaps the world can be the best version of itself that it could be.
I like that. And I've always been struck by this metaphor that Paul Gilbert's talked about on training, and he said that essentially we all need to poo at some point in our lives. It's part of being human, and yet we don't sort of spend all of our time beating ourselves up for the fact we need to poo. It doesn't mean that we're horrible, disgusting people, it just means we're human. But it is our responsibility to not go and poo in the street, and you know, we do need to wash our hands afterwards, and we need to poo safely so it doesn't affect other people. And I kind of quite liked that metaphor, that our brains aren't our fault, but we need to try and take what responsibility we can to use them in the best way. And the best way to do that is to have mindfulness of some of these loops that we have.
My feeling now is we should do an exercise, a breathing exercise.
Yeah.
To actually embody some of this.
Yeah. I wonder if it'd be helpful just to kind of let you know. I think most people will probably have a sense and be aware, but we've got these two types of nervous system. Essentially, we've got our rest and digest nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, which we feel a lot more calmer when when that's activated. We might feel quite connected with people at times, and then we've got the most people know about the fight and flight nervous system. And often, in order to be able to stimulate compassion, we really need to try and stimulate our parasympathetic nervous system. I've hopefully got a slide that just sums that up a little bit. All right, it's not moving on for some reason. There we go. So yes, so on the one side we've got our rest and digest, and the other side we've got our fight and flight, and the two can't really be active at the same time. So if we can do something to help stimulate our rest and digest nervous system, then often it calms that fight and flight nervous system. And as we know, when we're in our fight or flight response, it's a lot more difficult to reason, it's a lot more difficult to have compassion and mindfulness and reflect on things. So, and one of the ways that we can stimulate our rest and digest nervous system is to slow our breathing down. So to start to have an awareness of our breathing, which might feel strange at first if you're not used to it, but we can ultimately use the body slowing that breath down to then calm our mind, to then be in a position to start. That's the kind of starting point for building a sense of a compassionate self. So I wonder if we do a little exercise. So it's called soothing rhythm breathing. You might have done it before. So I just invite people, you can switch your cameras off if you're more comfortable with that, but just getting yourself into a comfortable upright position with both feet flat on the floor in front of you. Maybe you bring your back a little bit away from the chair, and having your back upright but still in its natural S shape, because having it so rigid isn't very compassionate. And maybe imagining that there's a string just holding your head up to the ceiling, helping you sit up tall. And if you're comfortable, just closing your eyes, or if not, just soften your gaze a little bit. And just start to bring your attention to your breath. You might find that your breath changes a little bit as you notice it. And that's okay. Perhaps you notice your breath with your chest rising and falling. Or maybe you notice it more, the cool air going in your nostrils and the warm air going out. And perhaps you even notice your breath in the lower part of your body, perhaps your abdomen expanding and contracting. Or you might notice your breath in the back of your body, perhaps the movement of your rib cage as you breathe. And you'll find that your mind gets distracted, because that's what minds do. But just when you notice that, gently and kindly bring it back to your breath. And then just see if you can, just start to slow your breath down a little bit. So that might start with just deepening your in-breath slightly. And then lengthening your out-breath a little bit. And as your mind gets distracted, because that's what minds do, just kindly bringing it back to your breath. And if it helps, it can be useful to just have a little pause at the top of your in-breath, just a little second, and then gently letting your breath out. And that feeling on your out-breath of just letting it go a little bit, and letting some of the tension go. And it might be helpful on your out-breath to say the words in your mind, mind slowing down. And again on your out-breath, body slowing down. So hopefully getting into a breathing rhythm that's comfortable for you, but brings with it a sense of slowing things down a little bit. Perhaps your body feeling a little bit heavier in the chair. Maybe you want to slouch back a little bit, that's okay. Perhaps your feet feeling a little bit heavier on the floor. So as we end the exercise, just in your own time, just trying if you can to bring whatever you've learned from this exercise, this sense of slowing down, into the rest of the day, the rest of the webinar. So gently ending, opening your eyes if they're closed, bringing your attention back to the room. So normally I'd ask for comments and how that went for people, but it's really hard when there's 80 people in. I imagine not everybody wants to talk. But I guess I'm imagining there's a range of experiences for people. Perhaps some people found it quite easy, it's something that they've done before, or perhaps some people found it harder, perhaps you haven't had practice at it, or maybe today's a particularly difficult day for you. Know that we can have a lot going on in our jobs, and especially at the moment. But I guess wherever you're starting from with this practice, just acknowledging that, and that's okay. And this is something that can be practiced in your own time, and it's a skill that you kind of build up over time. I know that compassion focused therapy would say that the ideal length of breath is to have 6 breaths per minute, so having 5 seconds on your in breath and 5 seconds on your out breath. And sometimes counting can really help people, but sometimes that's also really unhelpful, and particularly if somebody else is counting for you. So it's something to practice, but this sense of using your body to be able to then calm your mind. We know when we're caught up in our threat system and ruminating, we can't think very well. So being able to do that, and that can be helpful in our work, helping us be able to kind of reason and think and actually be there with people. But it can also be helpful in our personal lives, and perhaps tolerating some of the challenges that we have at work as well.
So, I mean, is there any comments? If anybody does want to say anything, any observations or comments, please do feel free to type stuff in, and we'll monitor that. So this is this week's really the beginning of this 5-week course, where we've introduced a few of the ideas around compassion, and we're going to continue to develop those as we go along. I mean, just to go back really, so why compassion? Our minds have evolved in a way that makes them tricky. We've got an old brain and a new brain. We're shaped by experiences that we have very little control over. So in that way, it's not our fault. From that point on, it becomes our responsibility. And then the third one is that we have these 3 emotional regulation systems. And we're going to talk more about that next week. Has anybody got anything? So there's something here, it was good. I can add to the techniques I use with patients.
I really
that's a
like
perfect example, Craig. Yeah.
I really like Christine's comment that I use this with clients, but I often forget to with myself. And that, yeah, how many of us do that? That's so poignant.
All right, yeah.
But really, this is something certainly that you can use, and that CFT would certainly recommend using if you've got a particularly challenging situation at work, or perhaps you're going to spend some time even with a colleague or whatever, and just having this couple of minutes checking in, slowing your breathing down can work wonders, and making sure using your body to calm your mind. Obviously, we focused a lot on breath there, and we didn't think a lot about body posture apart from the initial posture that I kind of recommended that you use, that upright posture. But we have something called biofeedback, where our posture and our facial expressions can really affect how we feel. So if we're sat there hunched over with a grumpy face, we might feel grumpy and anxious. So really paying attention to how you're kind of sitting, how you're carrying yourself is massively important. And it's something that we'll talk a bit more about as we kind of progress with the compassion practice.
A couple of people there are talking about how it made them feel tired and sleepy. I think that it associates relaxing with sleeping often. When we begin to let go, I mean, in order to sleep, we need to let go. So for me, I feel that sometimes when I do this, I begin to let go, and I've been holding on. When I do that, I can feel like I just want to get my head down for a bit, actually. So that's fine. It's our body saying, you've probably had a hard day, you know, you probably could do with a sleep. So yeah, that's perfectly acceptable. So this is something like people are saying here that we can use ourselves. And if we're working with somebody who's a little bit emotionally excited, upset, it's something that you can use to help just soothe and calm them too. So it's able, you know, we can use it for various things, really.
Mm.
Anybody
And I guess
else?
the
Sorry,
other
Esther.
thing I guess to think about is the overall aim of the soothing rhythm breathing isn't to have this wonderful relaxed feeling. I guess it's, you know, sometimes that might happen, sometimes it might not, but it's to kind of just slow down a little bit and enable you to have a little bit of space to then be able to think. So it's a kind of starting point for something else, rather than you know, getting rid of all of your distress. And because remember, compassion isn't about avoiding distress. It's not about you know, getting rid of all of your distress. It's about actually building your capacity to tolerate it and be able to turn towards it and acknowledge it and be mindful of it, rather than getting rid of any unwanted sensations. I hope that's making sense.
Yeah, that's a good point, I think, to remember that. And we'll develop that idea, and we'll develop the idea of what soothing breathing can help us with as we go on. Anybody, anything else? Any other comments? Anything else, Esther? Where are we? 22. Yeah, what should we do now then? Should we move on? Should we move on to the we've spoken about, you know, we can train compassion. We've spoken about the qualities of wisdom, strength, and commitment that we need, and we'll develop those over the weeks too. We've also looked at the power of imagery. We've touched on that. Is there anything more we can say?
I wonder if we can talk a little bit more about that. I guess what we have talked a bit in the idea that we have these new brains, or this more newer brains that can start to ruminate and worry and things. But one of the positive things about that new brain is it can also generate images, and which can then have an impact on our body. So just like if you're thinking about food, you might start to feel hungry. I know it's getting up to tea time now for some people. Or if you're watching TV and something kind of sexual comes on, that might have an impact on your body as well. So what we see and the images that we create in our minds can really have an impact on our body, and that imagery can be very powerful. So when we're moving on, some of the exercises that we'll do about compassion will be about using imagery to try and stimulate things in our body that might be helpful to us. And I know sometimes when we start to do that, that the sense that people kind of say, well, I can't do imagery, I can't see pictures in my mind, I just can't do it. But if I asked you to imagine a bicycle, you could probably tell me that it's got two wheels and it's got a seat, and you might have a kind of fleeting glimpse of a bicycle kind of in your mind, but it's never going to be a totally clear picture. So that'll be something that we'll think more about. And I know Lee mentioned the qualities of wisdom, strength, and commitment, and hopefully, at least today, I think we've focused quite a lot on wisdom. So this sense of evolution, and that we haven't chosen to be here, we haven't chosen to be born, we haven't chosen our life circumstances, we haven't chosen our genes, and we need to bring that bring that to compassion, and that's the kind of wisdom element. What we haven't thought as much about is strength and commitment, but those three qualities are the kind of cornerstone to compassion, really. So it's having the wisdom, but the strength might be to actually be able to face up to suffering. Sometimes that takes quite a lot of courage, you know, but also that commitment as well, which I'm thinking that people have that commitment by actually turning up here today, and this is a kind of putting action to your commitment, isn't it, to be able to develop compassion for yourself and others and build on those resources more. So that's great. And I guess one more thing to kind of finish with, that I don't think I got across when I discussed the definition, but is that compassion is about a motivation. It's not about just feelings of kindness and warmth, and it's not a feeling, it's about a motivation. So actually, you know, we find it much easier to be compassionate to people that we like and that may be part of our family. That's much easier. But how we maintain compassion when somebody's throwing a chair at us or telling us to get lost, or whatever ways they might say that, is much harder. But actually the wish to try and maintain compassion for that person and be sensitive to the suffering, it might not involve some lovely pleasant feelings, but still having that commitment and that motivation there is helpful. I know sometimes working with NHS staff, people can say, well, you know, I'm not feeling very compassionate towards them at the moment. You know, this work is hard. We have lots of challenges in working with members of the public. But I think it's reassuring to know that compassion is not about feeling. The very fact that you want to be able to develop more compassion and have that motivation is compassionate. I hope that's making sense.
So it takes a lot of courage to be compassionate.
Mm.
It's not just a fluffy thing. I think what part of what you're saying.
Yeah. Mm.
And these are all things we'll develop over the 5 weeks. Do you think we should move to the exercise? What we want to do from next week is we want to start and end the sessions with actually a compassionate exercise. So just before we start this, what we'll do is when we finish, I think that will be the end of the session for today, and we'll all say goodbye. And then next week, same time, we'll all come together as we did today, and we'll start off with a soothing breathing exercise. So then we set up and finish the sessions in a similar sort of way. Is that okay with everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Shall we do this? Shall we do it then?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So what we're going to do now, what we're going to finish today off with is a kindness and compassion exercise. We're going to start off with a kindness and compassion for self, and then we're going to expand that. So the way we begin is we begin as we did with the soothing breathing. So find yourself comfortable in your seat. Feel your feet on the ground, connecting with the ground. Feel your body connecting with the seat. If you're able to close your eyes, please close your eyes. If you can't or feel unable to do that, just soften your focus so you're not really focusing on anything. Feeling that your head is suspended from the top. So it's a strong, relaxed, but upright position. The front of your body is open. And then just allow your attention to settle on your breathing. Allow your mind to settle on your breath and on the sensation of the air moving in and out of your body. Generally breathe in and out through our nose. If you're unable to do that, you can use your mouth. Remember, if your mind drifts off, you're distracted, that's fine, that's okay. That's what our tricky brain does. And as you breathe out, you can say to yourself, mind slowing down. Body slowing down. And then I'm going to invite you to say something. I'll say it out loud and you can repeat it in your head. We're going to say each time, we're going to say each thing 3 times. So we breathe in, and on the out breath you can say to yourself, may I be well. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. May I be well. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. May I be well. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. Feel your body breathing. Feel the sensation of the air moving in and out of your body. And then I'd invite you to think of somebody who you care about, who you're fond of. Friend, family member, lover, somebody you feel close to. And then bear them in mind and say to yourself, may they be well. May they be happy. May they be free from suffering. May they be well. May they be happy. May they be free from suffering. May they be well. May they be happy. May they be free from suffering. And then you can feel your body breathing again. Be aware if your mind is flying off here and there. If you're distracted, that's fine. That's what our tricky brains do. And then I'd like us to finish with a third exercise where we imagine all the people in this group, all the people in the webinar taking part, some of whom you may never have met, but just imagine them all sat there listening to this, breathing, and say to yourself, may we be well. May we be happy. May we be free from suffering. May we be well. May we be happy. May we be free of suffering. May we be well. May we be happy. May we be free of suffering. Feel your body breathing. Take a nice deep breath in and breathe out, and you can open your eyes. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, and we'll be here next week. And we'll start off with a soothing breathing. We'll do the same as we did this week. Take care, everybody.